Today, I'm going to start my review on one of the best modern shonen out there. I watched season 1 and 2 of the anime and I fell in love with the characters. The cheerful, the painful, the magical. Jujutsu Kaisen. If this video somehow made it to you, chances are you've already seen the anime, but in this review, I'm going through the manga, and I'm also going to be pointing out the differences between the manga and the anime itself. This way, we can get the true and unfiltered vision of the original work. The series itself is going to be split up into every storyline. This won't necessarily mean an entire arc, but when one story ends and another begins. For example, in this review, we're only going to be covering the first 2 chapters of the manga. So let's get straight into it, starting with the introduction. In the first panel, we see an immediate difference in the material. We start off by seeing a frustrated young man, annoyed that something has gone missing, and an authoritative figure telling him he can't come back unless he finds it. I love how this opening panel is like inked almost entirely black. It helps add a level of eeriness to the scene, and helps it feel more serious than its anime counterpart. The anime's version is not like this at all. In the anime, this scene is played for laughs and isn't even the opening scene. There's actually 2 additional scenes before this that the anime added. One, an entirely original scene of Itadori calling the hospital, and a second one, which is a scene from chapter 2, added in at the very start of the first episode. This dark tone is quickly contrasted by the next scene. We see 3 students, and they're messing around, playing with a regional version of the Ouija board. It's revealed that this is the occult club. The class rep comes in and reprimands them for not doing proper activities. They prove him wrong by revealing that it's most likely that the foreman who constructed the school is most likely dead under the football pitch. And this is why some of the players got sick, when in reality it was just fleas. After some more funny altercations with the PE teacher and the class rep, something is revealed to us. And we see just what this character of Itadori is truly capable of. They're playing a game where they throw a metal ball as far as they can. The PE teacher throws it 14 meters, which is the Japanese national record. And then Itadori steps up to play. Instead of using the proper form, he throws it like a baseball and sends it a whopping 23 meters, stopping early because it hits the goalpost. 23 meters, by the way, would be the world record. So we can clearly see that Itadori is no normal student. And our mystery fella says as much. He compares him to one known as Zenin, but not before he introduces us to the world of curses. These are spiritual creatures that are somehow linked to death, as he speculates if there's a dead body buried nearby. This might be the same dead body that the occult club were linking to earlier. But I do wonder what that could mean. I wonder if it's a similar system to that in Chainsaw Man. In Chainsaw Man, there's creatures called devils, and these devils gain strength based on how much the populace fears them. That'd explain why he could link it to that dead body. Whatever the case, he discovers a horrible aura coming from a fairly surprising place. It comes from Itadori, and coming from that graphic, I can only assume that it's a negative source. But too bad for him, because Itadori is long gone, on his way to visit his sick grandfather. The start of these types of stories can sometimes feel very predictable. I know that this is a battle shonen, but so far, it really feels like a slice of life, but with a mystery side plot. I'm well aware that there's going to be some form of inciting incident. An example of this would be in Yu Yu Hakusho, where the main character dies, and thus introduces us to the magical world of the spirit realm. Ooh. I don't know what it's going to be like in this, but what I do know is that these 2 plot narratives are certainly going to collide, and that's when the event will happen. Moving on, Itadori's grandfather has something very important to tell him, and it's about Itadori's parents. Now, this is interesting to me because are they demons? Are they curses? Are they superheroes? Are they superhero-powered demons? This could be where we get our explanation as to why Itadori is capable of throwing that goddamn ball like that. But instead, he doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't care. On the surface, I found this a little annoying. But when I read into it a bit, I had an appreciation for it. It's simple as Itadori wants to spend some time with his sick grandfather, and he doesn't want to hear about some absentee parent. The scene itself is comfy and wholesome, but unfortunately, we leave it on a bittersweet end.
俺みたいになるなよ。
This, to put it simply, was heartbreaking. And made even worse so because we know Itadori has no parents. We know that he's alone now, without his only father figure, putting him in the position that his grandfather didn't want him to be, alone. I haven't lost a parent, so I'm incapable of comprehending the pain that a character or an individual would feel in a situation like this. And it seems like either can Itadori. He says it hasn't sunk in, and he might as well put a smile on his face because his grandfather wouldn't want him to be moping around feeling sorry for himself. A seemingly light-hearted statement that, in my opinion, is probably most likely an excuse to push away the emotions that he's currently going through in order to just get on with what he has to do. And he has to do a lot. He's not only in mourning, he has to figure out how he's gonna live. He has no adult in his life anymore. And right now, that doesn't even matter, because he doesn't even have the option or chance to go through these emotions. The mystery boy is here, and he is being ominous. His name is Megumi Fujigoro. Now, this panel in the manga is far more impactful once again than in the anime. When reading manga, you're far more likely to linger on a panel, but you don't have that option while watching a show. See, you can look at this image, and because you're able to stay as long as you want, it's more impactful than in the anime, where it's there for about 2 seconds and it immediately brightens up Fujigoro's face and diffuses the tension. Megumi desperately wants to know what Itadori has done with this story's MacGuffin, a cursed object known as a finger of Sukuna. A MacGuffin is usually a magical object of some sort, or simply a plot device used to put the characters into motion. A perfect example of a MacGuffin are the Dragon Balls. If it wasn't for the Dragon Balls, Goku would be sitting out in the woods and would have never really come into contact with other people. Thus, the Dragon Ball story would have never happened without the Dragon Balls. There's a reason why it's on the title, and this story has its own MacGuffin, which is the Sukuna finger. And this MacGuffin is particularly dangerous in the realm of cursed energy. Then we get an info dump that, in essence, says people have negative emotions, and those negative emotions can turn into curses, which are mystical beasts that most people can't see. And this cursed artifact attracts them, so it's really important that Fujigoro knows where it is. Itadori has left it with his friends back at school, and Megumi lets him know that they're probably going to die. And thus the inciting incident that I knew was coming, and a pretty creative way to bring it about using a MacGuffin. The only thing I don't like about this setup is the fact that it wasn't established prior. The object of the Sukuna finger has not been mentioned at all to this point. In storytelling, I think it's really important to show and don't tell. I feel like the pieces should be in place there for the reader to figure it out, because at the end of the day, they're not going to know they're right until it happens. That being said, I actually really enjoyed the fact that there was these two storylines. One, expressing and expanding the world through the introduction of curses and a mystery side plot. And then we're introduced to the wholesome character of Itadori, who has just gone through some form of loss, which is probably going to end up being his motive to continue to go forward. And in creating this incident, you're putting the responsibility of the danger on Itadori. And we're going to see a comparison of Megumi and Itadori, one experienced with curses, and Itadori's lack of any former knowledge. As we dive straight in, Megumi sidelines Itadori immediately due to lack of experience, and goes in to try help the civilians himself. Not that he needed convincing, because he's just crippled with fear. Megumi enters the school and shows us that his dark, edgy exterior isn't just for show, and he pulls out a very interesting ability. Shadowgraphy, or ombriance, is a performance when you use your hands to make shadows. This act was very popular in the early 18th century, when electricity wasn't readily available in the modern home, and thus would have been lit by candlelight. The idea and execution of this technique is phenomenal. I wonder what else he has under his sleeve. Itadori's friend is about to die. Megumi is not able to make the save. So with his grandfather's words driving even more strength into his kick, Itadori makes the save. With a newfound resolve and understanding for his grandfather, Itadori forms a new worldview and acceptance of the inevitable. Although there was a small bit of calm, the fight is not over yet, and Megumin is down for the count. By ensuring Itadori and the civilian's safety, he's left himself open, showing us that not only can Megumin be selfless, but he can take a beating. So much so that Itadori, now returned, is his last line of defense. Megumin's life is in Itadori's hands, and you can't help but wonder, how can Itadori succeed where Megumin didn't? And the uncomfortable truth is that he can't. All he can do is act on the information he has available to him. And he does just that, swallowing the Sukuna finger in order to gain more cursed energy, which Megumin is horrified to see. Sukuna was a Jujutsu sorcerer himself from over 1,000 years ago and is regarded as the king of curses. The Jujutsu sorcerers of this time sacrificed themselves to fight against Sukuna, but ultimately failed. He only exists today because he transformed himself into a cursed object capable of reincarnation. Now, the sequence before this was dramatized a lot in the anime. Itadori is staring the cursed monster in the face and eats the finger. He isn't thrown up in the air and somehow manages to get it into his mouth at the last second. That's an over embellishment, and although dramatic and the animation is sublime, I feel like the spectacle kind of takes away from Sukuna's reveal. The tone in the manga is that Itadori has nothing left, but you can clearly see in the anime that he is still capable of putting up a fight. In a very contradictory tone as to the established character so far, Megumin makes his intentions of excising Itadori very clear. He says it's because of some jujutsu regulation, but I really don't believe that he could have gone through with this. Not that he was able to, thanks to the introduction of Gojo. With Gojo's introduction, the battle comes to a quick end, and he takes over the direction of the rest of this part of the story. In doing so, he proves that even if Itadori can't fully control Sukuna, he can handle Sukuna if he ever comes out. Something that in the past, sorcerers have not been able to do. We then return to the interrogation, where Gojo gives Itadori an ultimatum. He can choose to die here and now, or help them find Sukuna's fingers, consume them all, and then die, as this is the only way to destroy the cursed objects and Sukuna himself. Itadori makes his decision. As his grandfather's ashes burn behind him, he joins the world of Jujutsu sorcery. Now, in the manga, this happens behind Gojo and Itadori as they sit on a bench. I thought it was really good because the fact that it was happening behind them and in the background kind of symbolized that that's in his past and he's going to only be able to step forward into his future. But I also really like the added tone of going into the mortarium and Itadori picking up his grandfather's bones and putting them in the urn. Although it adds more depth and visual contrast to the scene, I don't see how this change helps progress the narrative. I'd be remiss if I wasn't to mention a few things that I didn't bring up, like Itadori going to visit his classmates, not doing so to find forgiveness, but to take responsibility for what he's done. It shows a really genuine side to the character. And another genuine side we missed is when Megumin requests to Gojo that Itadori is kept safe and not instantly killed. I mentioned that I didn't think he could go through with it, and this only reiterates that opinion. But thanks for watching, and if you want to see more, subscribe.